Welcome back. We had a great session on Tuesday, the webinar that we did with Cocharger and a number of other panelists. We had such a good conversation that we didn't manage to get to all the questions. So we thought what we do is we do a follow-up session with myself chatting to Joel and just go through some of those questions, and then we'll get those out to everyone as well. So hi Joel.
Morning.
Yeah, so I might as well just go straight in. So the first question we had was from Rona Gray, which is asking if they're hoping to hear something about batteries and storage, as this has ethical implications.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a wider context here, which is, I don't think I'm paranoid. Quentin Wilson was talking last week about how in 40 years in journalism in the automotive sector, he's never seen such a coordinated and aggressive misinformation campaign in his life. And it's making it difficult to pick out the truth from this, because there's always a grain of truth in something. It's usually the balance that's missing. So, for instance, on the batteries, there was a meme shared of this, look what lithium mines look like. And it wasn't. It was a 1970s copper mine in the Congo. That didn't create itself. There's a big push against this. Lithium is, I think, something like, is it the 25th most abundant element in the Earth's crust? To give you some idea, tin is the 50th. It's very, very abundant. It's also one of the easiest to mine. There are bad ways of mining it, and we see that around the world. And the problem, much like the cobalt thing, is with mining practice. People are going the race to the bottom who can do it most cheaply. But lithium, as we're seeing in with Tesla, you can do it in a really unobtrusive way. They're planning with their latest, I think they're going to a terafactory next, and they'll get all the lithium from the state in which the factory's located, because it's just that easy to get. I think, there is no such thing as mining that's impact free. However, what we've got to do is they always leave out the balance. So the question isn't, is it perfectly clean? Because if we look for perfect, we'll never do anything. The answer is it an improvement? And when you look at the damage that the oil industry does, it's pretty obvious what is the improvement. There's a vast, vast improvement going to what it takes to make batteries. And also, let's look at the way those factories are run. They're, Tesla factories, I think VW factories, they run on renewables. You can produce electric cars renewably. You cannot produce renewable fossil fuel. So that's the difference. Is just because we're not doing it today, there are factories in China making EVs that aren't renewables yet, but they will be. So let's get some balance and look forward and go, look, keeping going fossil fuels, we know where that ends. We've seen the IPCC report. But switching to EVs and batteries can be made sustainable. So let's just keep some balance on that and not be taken in by the misinformation. I'm trying to think what else we can cover off that people asked about.
I think one piece on there is that came back is, there are other sorts of alternative technologies being quoted as sort of, silver bullets. So one of those is battery swap outs, and another is hydrogen.
Yeah, I think the battery swap out thing comes from that comparison we did with the mobile phone. There's a reason why you don't get battery swap out stations along the M5 for your mobile phone. You don't need it. It is being looked at. It may play a part, but the cost of doing that, the implications in terms of standardization across cars, the cost of doing it, the implications of, well, okay, am I swapping for a better battery, a worse battery, all that, it's not worth it. You don't need it. Bottom line is 90 whatever % of your journeys, I think it's up to 99, are well within the capacity of your battery. In practice, you just don't need these things. You never get someone who's got an EV saying, oh, I want to swap out. You just don't need it. The hydrogen thing is more interesting. I've worked a lot in the automotive industry, and my opinion, he says, covering himself legally, is that hydrogen cars are a means to keep selling petrol and diesel cars. Nobody really expects in that industry for you to buy hydrogen cars. The one that everybody talks about has been going for 10 years. There's still only, I think, 9 places in the UK you can fuel it, and it costs 65,000 quid. They're not a thing that's going to happen. The only reason they're out there is for companies to make people say, oh, I won't get an EV, I'll wait for hydrogen. So what they're doing is selling you more fossil fuel cars. So don't be taken in by that.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. And I think there are issues with the way hydrogen is produced anyway, because there's, you can produce hydrogen from renewables, but it's a high energy process, and most of hydrogen is produced by burning fossil fuels. So it's business as usual, really.
I would like to put a massive caveat. I'm actually very excited about hydrogen when it comes to large scale and point to point. So in shipping, it's already happening. In trains, it's already happening. It is being looked at for trucks and could work really well. There's all sorts of places. Hydrogen is going to find a huge market, or has found one. Aeroplanes, we've seen up in, I think it was in Norfolk, there was a plane flown just powered by hydrogen fuel cells. So I'm not saying hydrogen won't happen. I'm saying hydrogen for domestic cars, forget it. Not going to happen.
Right. Okay, thanks for that. And then I think while we're just doing a little bit of myth busting, there's another one that comes up quite a lot, is that, okay, with this huge spike in demand for EVs, that the UK grid won't be able to cope.
Yeah, that's a classic one. You never ever hear that from the industry, because the industry looked at this and modeled it years ago. National Grid published a report saying, we're fine, thanks. And EVs, when you look at vehicle to grid, EVs are a solution to flatten out their storage option. They're not a problem for the grid. They're the opportunity that enables the grid to go to renewables more quickly. So utter misinformation. It's not a problem if you ask. And I've spoken personally to the boss of National Grid, and he goes, yeah, it's great, gives us lots of options. So read the report, look it up, not a problem.
Right, thanks for that. Okay, so then moving on, we've got a question from Mel Godfrey. And can you just talk a bit about the practical issues of a shared use of a home charger? And this is something that comes up often. People get concerned about, oh, what if there's a car parked in the drive? How do I arrange to go at particular times? How does Cochargers solve that problem?
Okay, I mean, the first thing to realize is there's no silver bullets. Cocharger is one of a patchwork of solutions. Like we were saying, in the base charging option for people who can't have a home charger, there's mobile, there's curbside, there's community charging. So it's one of a patchwork, but more than that, we don't need every charger to be shared. We've worked out we need something in the order of 1 in 25. So for a lot of people, it's just not practical to move their car. The app sends you a reminder to say, make sure you don't park by a charger because Fred's coming around this evening. And Fred gets a reminder saying, remember to not go and find a parking space out on the street. You're at Sue's house. So it does all that. But if there's no room on your driveway, it might be that you just can't be a host, or if it's too much hassle. Obviously, you make decent money. You're paid quite well to move your car once a week for these people. But in practice, yeah, it's not for everybody. And also, a lot of people don't live in an area where it's needed. If you live in an area where everybody's got a driveway, you know what, that might just not be your thing. But in practice, yeah, the app basically, the aim of the app is to make the experience for the chargee as close as possible to the experience of having a home charger. The one exception is you have a longer walk to your front door. So in practice, the typical pattern we see is you've got somebody who's got a diesel that they hate, or a petrol car that they hate, and they want to buy an EV, and they live in, I don't know, a terrace. They get the app, they set up an account, and they look, and it goes, oh, there you go. There's somebody 2 streets away who's a host. Or if there isn't, it sets an alert, and you're told as soon as somebody registers. And so when you register, if there's nobody there, you just wait, because it's growing at about 30% a month. It's not too long before somebody sets up. So you get that alert, you get in touch, you say, okay, I'm thinking of ordering an EV, just want to confirm, can I book every Tuesday night? Yep, fine, right, order the car. And when you get the car, you can book up to a year in advance, every week, the same slot. Typically they're overnight, so you can drop it off on the way home from work, plug it in, set the session going, go to bed. Next morning, walk around the corner, literally unplug, drive off. The app does everything else, works out the numbers, the host gets the figures just to check, and there's a way to query it if you think there's something wrong. And the payments are taken. It's all incredibly smooth. So yeah, there's a practicalities, but the whole thing has been designed to be so simple. And the thing we get from both sides after their first session is, oh, that was easier than I thought. And once you've done it once, the host doesn't even have to be there, as long as you've arranged a way for that person to get to your charger. So in my case, my neighbors know where I keep the key. It's that simple. This is neighbors. This is every week. This is not a stranger on your driveway. So the practicalities have been thought through, worked through, piloted, adjusted. 2 years on this for a reason, and it's really, really easy to do.
Right. And I think you probably hinted towards one of the other things that comes up is that the app just makes everything easy, makes it run smoothly. And so, one thing that might come back is someone might say, well, why don't you just, once you've got that relationship with your nearby neighbour, why don't you just then do that directly between the two of you? Why use Cocharger?
Well, this is why the fee has to be kept as low as possible. We've modeled it down to, the strategy we've got, which is do good, make just enough money to keep doing it. And that's why it's only 10% plus VAT. Okay, by the time the VAT's gone and the banks have taken their fee, we're operating on a tiny margin, but it's enough to run the scheme. And my personal experience that led to this was that I literally went to the neighbour that convinced me to buy the car, and I had a 6 weeks delay before the charger arrived, which is a nightmare in a little village with no chargers anywhere. I literally had a car I couldn't use otherwise. And I just said, look, every Tuesday I'm going to stop off on the way from work. I'm going to plug it in, come to yours, plug into your charger. And I had a very small battery back then, 6 years ago. It was a £5 note through the door. It was okay, but it got strained in 6 weeks because he forgot to move his car. I forgot to turn up, or I'd turn up with a 60% full battery and think 5 is a bit expensive. Or I'd turn up with a 2% battery. I cut it fine once or twice and he'd go, 5 is not enough. And it starts to get difficult. So the idea is, look, for that 12%, you get the reminders, you get the booking, you get the security. It makes sure he's not double booked. He never, as can happen. Oh yeah, I forgot. I've got friends coming around. There won't be space on the driveway. That sort of, it just goes away. So the idea is the fee is so small, there's no way you would want to bypass it. It's just not worth it. We're only talking about a very small amount of money anyway. I think we worked out the average bill for a chargee for an entire year of charging your car is less than £500. So why would you? It's not worth cutting it out.
Exactly. No, that's great. Thank you. So moving on to a question here from Anne Forsyth is, how can you be sure that electricity at a co-charger is generated from renewable sources? I suppose this is a question around the fact that, quite a lot of our energy supply still comes from fossil fuels.
Well, actually, the first thing is, we don't shout about it much, but the UK's energy industry is a big success story on that. We get it's coming up on half now of we're not Germany, we're not Poland, we don't burn coal anymore. That's pretty much gone. The vast majority of it is CO2 neutral. So once you put nuclear on, we're really burning very little gas now, and it's reducing very quickly. So that's one thing, is even if you've got somebody who is on a normal tariff, why anybody wouldn't be on a renewables tariff, I still don't understand. But even if you have someone who is, it's still much, much better than it would be buying petrol or petrol or diesel, because there's no such thing as renewable there. The other thing is, by the time you take into account the thermal efficiency of an EV, where basically you are taking sunlight or whatever it is into the grid, into your car, as opposed to drilling for oil, transporting it, refining it, transporting it again, putting it in a car, putting it in an engine that's all of 28% efficient. I think an EV is something like 6 times more efficient. So it takes that tiny bit and makes it 6 times smaller. And then the fact that the vast majority, the last time we did the research, I think it was over 90% of EV owners, because they are of that mind, have got a fully renewable supply. So we crunched the numbers. I think an average fossil fuel car, if you include the supply chain, is getting on for 3,000 kilograms of CO2 a year, plus all the particulates to think about. An EV, when we crunched it down, it was fewer than 50 kilograms. It's that big a difference. So these reports that have all been debunked about, they're not that green, absolute garbage. Yes, they are, and they're getting greener. This is the point. Fossil fuels will never get greener. We know what they've done. We're watching the world on fire around us. That's the reality of fossil fuels. EVs already a tiny fraction of the emissions and getting smaller rapidly. So yes, it's a concern. One last thing on that. We are adding something to the platform that lets hosts display what kind of tariff they've got. We're working with some people in the industry. There is a greenness rating being put together by some very clever people that we work with, because we know electricity tariffs not always as green as they say. They're going to be grading that, and we're going to put that grading onto the platform, so that if you want to be really, really picky and say, actually, I'll go to that host instead of that one, you can use it as a differentiator.
I think that's really important, because we are going to see an expansion of this. Not everyone will be as committed into renewables maybe as your early adopters are. So giving people the opportunity to be selective on that it's just another way of nudging people towards using renewables. So it's, you know, it's sort of part of that holistic whole that Cocharger helps deliver. So that's great. Yeah, so that's, I think we got through all the questions. We've just got one more here, and it says, can you have a charger without one's own electric vehicle? I only rent from Co-Cars, but have solar and would like to be a provider.
Yeah, that's a cracking thought. We're hearing that more and more, and it's something we're looking into. Absolutely, you can. It makes life really easy. I've got a friend who's doing this right now. They're looking into getting a charger because they don't use the parking space. They're surrounded by terraces. It's perfect. They're going to really help that community and make quite a lot of money. They don't have solar. If you have solar, good grief, yes, you're going to do very well. The only thing to bear in mind is you don't get the OZEV grant if you don't buy a car. It's £350 more at the beginning. Hand buy second-hand ones, and let's bear in mind, if you've got solar, that's going to pay for itself really quickly. You know, let's be honest. If once you're up to lots of, say, you get 4 chargees, you know, the income off that is going to be well into 4 figures. So yeah, you can do it. Don't be put off by the lack of grant. If you can do it, do it. You can really help some people.
Great, thank you. Something worth considering for myself, because we've got solar panels on the roof, don't have an EV vehicle yet, so could definitely be looking at that.
Do it.
Okay, thank you for Joel. And as we, you know, Co-Chargers, you're raising money on FX at the moment. I'd, you know, encourage people, if you are interested, to come along to the FX platform, take a look at the profile there, have a read through the relevant documents. And Joel, are you open to people getting in touch with you if they've got any questions?
Absolutely, yeah. It's all about this at the moment. We're keen to speak to anybody. If you've got any questions at all, don't just sit there and be put off. Get in touch. Happy to talk to you, because yeah, we've been on this for 2 years. We've got this huge first mover advantage, and we just want to press the accelerator now. You know, everybody has opened the doors now. Got meetings with Department for Transport coming up. It's happening. And one thing I would point out is this is probably the last time funding's going to be available to the ordinary person rather than strategic and company investments. So if you want to get a part of this, now's the opportunity. You know, we're down to a week or so. Don't hang around and think, oh, they'll do it again soon, because probably won't get a chance. So we really want this to be powered by ordinary people trying to do good rather than corporations trying to make money. So please don't hang about. Get in there and have a look at it.
Exactly, and that's what we're all about here at FX, you know, enabling just ordinary people to make a real fundamental change in the world through how they use their money, and Co-Chargers an opportunity to do that.
Can I just make a point? Yeah. On that, do bear in mind that one of the things we're doing with that investment is looking at going overseas with this. The wonderful thing about the Co-Charger model is obviously it is that needed, but also it's that scalable. And it would be rather nice to think, yeah, I helped do that when it's in 100 countries around the world, because that's what we're trying to do with this.
Fantastic. And if people are thinking about investing, the deadline on this offer is the 20th of August. So if you get along to the profile and take a look if you are interested.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
That's great. Thanks a lot for that, Joel. I'm sure we'll talk to you again soon. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.